bomb exploded early this morning in the Pentagon, and left-wing terrorists telephoned newspapers to say they were responsible.
At midday, the Associated Press got a phone call from a man saying he was with the Weather Underground and that bombs would explode at the Departments of Interior and Agriculture and the Smithsonian before the day was out.
People calling themselves members of the Weather Underground last night planted bombs in federal office buildings in Washington and Oakland, California.
Credit for the Capitol bombing was claimed in a letter received by the Associated Press today, signed by the Weather Underground.
The explosion destroyed one of the Pentagon's 140 women's restrooms and blasted out a wall on the 4th floor.
They estimated that they would have to eliminate 25 million people in these re-education centers. And when I say eliminate, I mean kill.
From the front lines of the information war, it's Alex Jones.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are now into the second hour of this worldwide broadcast, and I've got to hand it to him, joining us here on the 20th day of January 2015 on this Tuesday. Bill Ayers, you can say what you want about him. He is more than happy to go out and debate people that I guess he disagrees with. And he's the former head of the Weather Underground, distinguished professor of education and senior university scholar at the University of Illinois at Chicago. I'm not going to go over all the things that he's been involved in. Ayers has written extensively about social justice, democracy and education, the cultural context of schooling and teaching as an essential intellectual, ethical, and political enterprise. He is a former vice president of the Curriculum Division of the American Educational Research Association, a member of the Executive Committee of AERA Council. His articles have appeared in the Harvard Educational Review. I'm not going to go over all of it. BillAyers.org. And I think what I want to do today is just let him have the floor the first 3, 4, 5 minutes and say what he has to say, because we were reached out to first by some of his people, and I'm glad this this discussion or debate is now finally happening. They wanted to talk about Common Core, education, things like that. That's fine. I want to get into Obama and the legacy. I mean, I know Ayers was his mentor. I think Obama even lived with him for a while, and he can correct me if I'm wrong. And so, I mean, is Obama the messianic socialist leader they thought would come, or will that be another? I mean, was Mao the Messiah? Was it Lenin? Was it Stalin? I want to understand this. So Bill Ayers joins us. We'll also ask him about Larry Grathwohl, the FBI informant, and that clip you just heard. You know, does he say that's true, or is that not true? So Bill Ayers, thank you so much for coming on with us today. Again, BillAyers.org.
Thank you very much.
Well, where do you want to start?
Well, let me correct a couple of things. One, I don't have any people who could have reached out to you because I'm just a retired professor and I write and I take care of my grandchildren. But
well, how did you end up getting on the show? Because I just remember months ago.
I have no idea. Somebody called me and said, would you do it? And I said, sure. That's number one. Number two, I was never the leader of the Weather Underground. I was one of the people who founded the faction within Students for a Democratic Society that became the Weather Underground. Number three, I was never a mentor to Barack Obama. He certainly never lived with me. He was a guy around the neighborhood. He's somebody I knew for many years, and I know it's been a big trope among some people on the right that somehow Barack Obama is not what he appears. He's got this black nationalist minister, Jeremiah Wright. He's got this Palestinian friend, and he's got me, who apparently ghost wrote his books. All of that is false. It's all silly, and if you just take a minute to think about it, it's somewhat ridiculous. So do you want to talk about Obama, the past, history, education? Where do you want to begin, Alex?
Well, first off, because I don't want to get sidetracked on minutia, I think you were here in town a while back from memory, and then wanted.
What town are you in?
Austin, Texas.
Yeah, I was in Austin not so long ago.
And I think it was one of the people that brought you then that contacted us and said, hey, would you want to debate him? And we're like, oh, yeah, that's going to happen. So that's cleared up there.
Oh, okay. All right, good.
But all of that aside here, then let me just start with communism itself, because most communists say they're socialist, but then when you get around them in person, they start telling you about violent overthrows and the plan to take over. Do you endorse the type of communism we saw in Russia, in China, or how would you really describe yourself?
Well, the answer to your question is no. But, you know, I've been a person who my whole life as an educator, I've opposed the notion of labeling people in a simple-minded way. But yes, I am opposed to capitalism. I think capitalism is a predatory system. I think it's a system that leads to racism, exploitation, etc. So yes, I'm anti-capitalist. And I am in favor of participatory democracy, which has been true my entire adult life. And that includes global democracy and it includes economic democracy. So yes, all of those things are true. I wouldn't, if you want to put a label on me, it's kind of complicated because I would say on the First Amendment, I'm a fundamentalist. I am fundamentally in favor of the First Amendment. On the question of the economy, I tend towards socialism of a democratic nature. In terms of the government, I'm more of an anarchist or a left libertarian than anything else. So it's hard to put a single label and say, well, this is what you represent. No, it's not true, but I am definitely, I believe that we need more democracy. In any democracy, the solution to our problems is more democracy, more participation. So that's what I fight for.
Let's come at it from this angle then. Have you changed, or how have your views changed since you were one of the core people in the Weather Underground versus 2015?
Well, I mean, I'm now 70 years old, so of course I've changed. I change every day, as you do, and all of us change. But in terms of fundamental values, I am deeply opposed to war. I'm deeply opposed to imperialism. I'm deeply opposed to white supremacy. I've been an ally of and fighter for the Black Freedom Movement and for anti-colonial struggles. So in that sense, I haven't changed. I think the wars that we're involved in now are catastrophic, not just for the rest of the world, but for America itself. And I think that we should, in that sense, I don't know where you stand on any of these issues. I've never talked to you. I've never, read anything you've written. I've never heard your show. But I'm wondering, are you closer to Rand Paul when it comes to militarism, or are you closer to John McCain?
Oh, I'd be Ron Paul. So you've got Ron Paul over on the libertarian end. You've got his son, unfortunately, moving towards the middle. And you've got John McCain completely mentally ill and insane.
Well, exactly. So in that sense, we have a point of unity, because I think we should close all foreign military bases, as Rand Paul does. I think that we should downsize the Pentagon by about 90%. I think we should stop the war industry. I think we should stop arming the dictators and petty fascists all over the world. I think we should become a nation among nations, not the uber nation, not the controller of everything. So in that sense, Alex, we've already found a point of unity.
What is your view of Barack Obama then?
I've always had the same view of Barack Obama as long as I've known him. I've known him for a long, long time. Barack Obama, as he said of himself in the 2008 campaign, and as he's defined himself all through his political life, he says of himself, I'm a moderate, middle-of-the-road, pragmatic, compromising politician. That's who he said he is. That's who he is. The right wing looked at him and said, no, he's not that. What he is instead is a secret Muslim who pals around with terrorists and has socialist ideas. I have yet to see a socialist idea come out of Barack Obama.
Are you kidding? He's talking about free community college and open borders?
Let me just say, the left wing looked at Obama and said, I think he's winking in my direction. But it wasn't true. Obama is a moderate, middle-of-the-road, pragmatic politician. That's who he said he was. That's who he is. Now,
sure.
He has a record for 7 years. You can examine his record. You don't have to...
Sure. Hey, Bill Ayers. Bill Ayers is our guest, Professor Ayers. Look, very good tactics about getting a point of unity. Why, if you were a Green Beret in a village with the village elders having a debate, you'd find that first point of unity, common ground. In a month, you'd have them fighting for you. And I understand that. But you're not a Green Beret. You fight for a different army. Who funds you? Because I've read you're connected to the Ford Foundation, Carnegie, and others. Have you ever got any funding from those guys?
Never, and I don't even know what that means. Who funds me? I'm a retired professor. I live modestly like other retired professors. I'm not sure what
You're saying there's not a CIA program back to the 50s to fund liberation theology that I know you're fully aware of at university campuses?
I hear your paranoia eking through, but I don't know what you're talking about. Liberation theology has nothing to do with campuses. It's a movement within the Catholic Church. Is it a left-wing movement in the Catholic Church? Yes, it is. Does it come out of Brazil? It does. Does Pope Francis, to some extent, is he some extent influenced by that? Apparently he is.
Oh, boy.
That has to do with me.
Are you excited about Pope Francis and his liberation theology?
It's hard for me to get excited about a pope. I know that for those of you who are Catholic, he's infallible, so I guess the Catholics must be excited about him. I think that when he says, who am I to judge, and when he opens himself to the possibility of greater freedom for women, I think those are good things.
And, of course, carbon taxes for George Soros, though.
I'm not sure what that means, Alex. I mean, I know you've got a big paranoid background that's somewhere bubbling up, but I don't understand.
I thought you don't know who I am. Hold on a minute. A big paranoid background. Mao killed 84 million people, according to the Chinese government. The CIA says 60 million. Are you saying that I shouldn't be worried about communism?
I didn't say that at all. You said something about George Soros. I don't know anything about George Soros. So
all right, let me ask you this.
I don't know what you're drawing on. So
you know nothing about George Soros.
I said, when you say this is a George Soros connection to Pope Francis, I don't know what you're talking about.
No, I wasn't saying that. I was about to get into asking you about George Soros, who is funding liberation theology.
Does George Soros support liberation theology? I have no idea. I don't know much about liberation theology, and I know nothing about George Soros except what I read occasionally in the newspapers.
Well, I mean, community organizing, stirring up groups, that's basically domestic liberation theology. Reverend Wright was a
Dude, slow down.
That's liberation theology.
Community organizing is stirring up groups? What's wrong with community organizing?
Well, no, that's a name. Radicalizing people has then been named community organizing and is funded by the big billionaires to destabilize. Well, listen, I want you to have a counterpoint to that when we come back. Bill Ayers is our guest. It is very interesting. BillAyers.org. Stay with us. All right, Bill Ayers is our guest. This is a short 6-minute segment, a long 18-minute segment's coming up so we can really get into a serious discussion. If he's up for it, we'll open the phones up so I guess supporters and detractors can call in. Here's where I stand, Professor Ayers. I don't know if you've read None Dare Call It Conspiracy by Gary Allen. I read that book back when I was like 14 years old. Since then, pretty much all of it has been proven to be accurate from my perspective, where ultra-rich crony capitalists fund socialist and communist movements, but also fascist movements, because they like to deal with command and control systems with domesticated populations. And I think that history's shown that collectivism delivers hell on earth and forced work camps. Now, that's why I disagree with you fundamentally. And I guess you believe that we have a real form of capitalism and you disagree with that. I don't believe we have capitalism. I believe we have fascism sitting on top of a socialist management system, and that the left-right paradigm that's taught is a fraud. What do you say?
I have no idea what you're talking about, but I think that I agree with you. I'm against forced work camps. I'm against slavery. I'm against nuclear holocaust. I'm against military bases abroad. That I understand. I don't know what you're talking about crony. I know finance capitalism is one of the great dangers in the world today, but I don't know what you mean about them funding socialists. What socialists have they funded? And if you say, well, they've funded Barack Obama, I see no evidence that Barack Obama is a socialist in any sense at all.
It's been declassified that the CIA did indeed put Mao Zedong into power in 1949.
Where did you find that? That's fascinating.
History Channel, but it was previously declassified.
I've never heard of that, but that's fascinating, and Mao Zedong is no hero of mine, so there we are. I mean, you've got these great theories, but I don't know, we're not talking the same language, because I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, exactly. You're speaking academia speech, where you're this nice, mild-mannered guy, and you're there with your significant other, Bernadine Dorn. I guess you guys were never involved in any bombings or anything, right?
No, that's not true. We were involved in trying to stop the murder of 6,000 people a week by our government that dragged on for 10 years. I was involved in nonviolent sit-ins. I was involved in all kinds of tactics that were legal. And eventually we did turn to what I would call extreme vandalism. We destroyed property to raise a screaming opposition to the murder of 6,000 people.
You didn't bomb police officers or blind police officers?
Not at all. Nothing like that ever happened. I know it's part of the narrative of the right, but it's just not true.
Really? So Weatherman bombs never wounded police?
I'm sorry?
Weatherman bombs never wounded police?
Never.